like I'm trying to get me a nudge, 'cause honey's wanna give me the pub. I'm politicking with this.
Alright guys, so it looks like we got a professional golfer here on the right today, and we got my classic model, Jim Park, over here on the left. So Jim's hitting about an 8-iron. It looks this guy's probably hitting more like a 4-iron, maybe even like kind of like a utility iron type ideas. So the angles are going to be a little bit different here, but let's just get into it and kind of start explaining. So first thing I'm going to check for is let's get this guy's knee flex at address. It looks like he's pretty upright in the knees. So again, for the longer clubs, you're going to see this angle kind of get a little bit higher and higher. So this player's over at 166. Now, most professionals, especially the better swinger players, you're not going to see him at this much of an angle here. I typically see, I would say for like a utility iron or for like a 4-iron, you're going to kind of see him closer to around like the 154 range, maybe creeping up to the 157 range. But 166, that's definitely a lot of extension in the knees at setup. Now from there we can get into the lower back spine angles. So we're going to draw one kind of around the butt, up through here as best as we can. He's over at 150, which is a little bit fairly bent over kind of from the lower back spine angle, but that kind of makes sense if you think about it, right? If his knees are standing pretty tall, well, your lower back spine angle is probably going to be a little bit lower just to kind of compensate. So he's at least matching it up, right? So that means that he's not going to get the handle crazy high or crazy low type of ideas. So his lying let setup is pretty much flush with the ground, or flush to wherever his fitter fitted into, because I'm guessing he's gotten fitted, obviously because he's a professional. So anyways, that would be something I'd keep in note. I'm not automatically going to start referencing ideas of changing that. Next thing I'm going to look for is I'm going to see balls of the feet, kneecaps, and armpits. So balls of the feet, armpits are on a line, so he's fairly centered. Knees are a little bit back of that. So nothing too crazy here, still something to keep note of. From there, I'm going to run him up. This video moves a touch, so I can't really draw the original shaft line. So I'm just going to go off the eye on this one. So takeaway is okay, right? Hand path works a little bit too far out for my liking. But again, takeaway, it's one of those things where the corridor of success, I guess if you want to quote Jim McClain, is a lot larger than it is kind of on the downswing. So I mean, nothing too crazy here. Left arm parallel, pretty good. Hands are a little bit too far out in front of him for my liking. If you notice, hips haven't quite released yet, right? So whenever it's called sequence of rotation. So whenever you're not rotating sternum backwards, right, getting rotation in the sternum and getting rotation in the hips, hand path on the backswing tends to work a little bit more out and a little bit more out in front of you, which my guess is this player has been working on that because possibly in the past he got hand path working too far behind him and then was getting stuck in transition. So maybe he's just overdoing it, maybe he's not. I don't quite fully know what he's working on, but I can see what I see now, and I know from my liking it's a little bit too far in front of him at this position, and he hasn't quite got the sequence of rotation quite right for my liking. Alright, from here, let's take a note of his headline. Now, the camera is moving just a touch, but we can kind of get a good idea. We're going to see that this head is going to start moving in closer to the golf ball. So whenever I see this move, it shows me, notice this little move, how it's going down and closer. It shows me this player is kind of staying in left bend with rotation kind of throughout the whole backswing. So if we take Jin up to the top of his swing, let's just draw one. Jin, fortunately, his camera is not moving correct, so we can draw one on him. Notice how his head lowers just a touch, but notice how it's not breaking that barrier. And let's notice another thing too. Notice how we can see a little bit more of his right hip here, or a little bit more of the middle of his pelvis, in left side pelvis. So we know that he's kind of letting his hips release and getting a bigger churn. Now this player obviously is not quite doing the same move in transition. So then from there, I would say he's also staying in left bend quite a bit as well, which is kind of getting him this little move right here. So I would say sequence of rotation is off. I'm going to keep that in note and going to kind of see what he starts doing from there. So let's erase these lines. So I'm going to take him down to left arm parallel and kind of look what we got going on. So Let's look at club shaft pitch. A little bit outside ball target line, so he's not super steep here, which is okay. I'm also going to run him back up again one more time. Now the camera is moving, so this line's not going to be super accurate as well, but just to kind of get an idea of hand paths. So he's working a little bit above that line for a little bit too much, right? So left arm parallel, I mean, pretty much from this click, you're going to see the hands already below that line. So let's kind of give you an example of what that looks like. So if we get Jin, watch how basically when the hands get level with the shoulders, see how it's already starting to drop below that line. So that just means player on the right hand path is working a little bit more out, which is not a horrible thing. It just means that you're going to typically hit more of a certain shot pattern, which would be a little bit more of a kind of a steeper-ish cut, depending on if the body does something. If the body stays in flexion and rotates, you're going to hit a little bit more of a steeper cut, which is not a horrible thing. So we'll see if he does. So let's draw some angles right here at the left arm parallel position. We'll get Jin down there real quick too. So this player right through the middle of the body, right around here. So this player's in a pretty good spot here. 55 degrees is pretty much optimal for the club he has for the longer irons. Now the shorter irons, you're going to see players maybe a little bit more kind of towards this 50 degree number. But again, remember, he's hitting a different club than Jin. So if I were to draw this angle over Jin, it'd be a little bit different. So nothing wrong there. Let's get knee flex. So he's over at 154. So see how those numbers are kind of matching up right there. So I would say this player's in a pretty good position here. Now the only thing I don't quite like is I would say hand path is just a smidge too far out. I'd like to see hands maybe a little bit more this way. And then club shaft pitch would be maybe a little bit more this way. So maybe just a tiny bit shallower than it is right now. So you would be kind of right here. So that would be something to keep note of. Still wouldn't quite recommend something right now. I'm just obviously analyzing the swing. Next thing to take note of, I would say knee flex hasn't quite turned or gone back to its addressed position, which is pretty common. Whenever you see a player's hand path work a little bit more out, depending on the pitch of the shaft, correct? So with this player's current pitch of the shaft, he's just a little bit outside ball target line, but not a whole lot. So you're typically not going to see him rotate as much just because it doesn't quite match up. The steeper the shaft pitch, the more likely you want to keep body lines closed. The more you lay down the shaft, the more so you want to have body lines open. So right now he's currently matching everything up, so that's definitely something to keep in note. All right, now from here, from P5 to right around this next click, we're going to start seeing some differences between him and Jin. We're going to start seeing basically that hand path working out and the club shaft pitch a little steep. We're going to start seeing how that plays into how the body starts moving. So next click, we immediately start seeing knee flex is starting to go into into extension a little early. So now he's up to that 161 number. So remember, he was at P5, I believe he was at 154. So that's 7 degrees of shift in a small little frame, guys, really small frame. So from this click to this click, that little tiny frame, he's gone 7 degrees of change. Now it's not it's definitely late in the swing to be doing that, but it's not super late. So he can still kind of recover from here, and obviously he does because he's a professional. And as well, something to take note of here, we can see that club shaft pitch is bisecting the bicep, which is okay, but a little bit more in a cut motion type of pitch. You're going to see the more neutral ball flight guys a little bit more so this way at this point, i.e. if we get over to Jin, notice how this club shaft is bisecting the forearm rather the bicep. So this bicep would be a little bit more of a cut pattern. Not always a cut pattern, right? You can always do something crazy with the body to make it into a draw pattern, but typically you see players on the forearm are going to be more of a neutral ball flight in general. Let's take him down another click. So this is pretty much hands level to hips. So this is kind of the same position Jin's at. We can start seeing a pretty big difference here. So I would say from these short clicks, we can see that players starting to lose angles a little early, which makes sense. Whenever you're a little steep, you're more likely to lose angles a touch earlier. So pretty much. Kind of around here would be, so we're going to miss some clicks here. So these aren't quite the same, but as well, we can also see that knees have definitely, they're not hyperextended yet, but they're getting close to that hyperextension. So he's over at 171. So again, I like to see players at 171 at the top of the swing, definitely not right before impact. I like to see a way more flexion in the knees. If we also get, kind of look at this angle right here, try to match it up as close as you can. So he's over at 60 degrees, which is okay, not too bad, but matching it with that knee flex that he has, he needs to get this a little bit lower, more so right around here, or he has to get more flexion in the knees at this point, one of the two. But he's a little bit out of position, right? So this goes to show players who get hand path working more out and have club shaft pitch not getting the proper amount of shallowness, or i.e. if his hands are out this way, he's going to have to get way more shallow at this point to match it. But he's not doing that, right? So what happens is the body starts extending. So either you see players extend in the chest, or you see them extend in the knees, or they kind of do a little bit of both, or they do a lot of both. Obviously, the lot of both are going to be more of your higher handicappers. The lesser of the both is going to be a little bit more like your professionals, like this player. But for a professional, he's extending his knees quite a bit, more so than I would see out of most guys. And then so obviously he's losing angles. And right around here, notice how his basically at impact, hip line is open up a little bit, shoulder line is open maybe just a touch, but he's not rotating that much. And obviously we can see that now he's pretty much, I would guess he's hyperextended that knee, right? So he's got to be close to 180 right here. All right, so he's at like 178. So he's pretty much hyperextended, correct? So maybe his whoever he's working with, maybe they've been talking to him about parametric acceleration, trying to get the chest up into the left through the impact zone to get more speed. I don't really know, but I know this guy's going to start, if he continues this swing in competition, maybe he's just like, maybe he has nerves of steel and it's not going to affect him. But this is a very heavily timing, you got to have really good timing to kind of do this type of move, which obviously he does because he plays at a high level. But I'm guessing this guy has been getting some lessons lately and has been, there's been a few ideas that have been thrown around. But anyways, we'll keep going, right? So we'll take him up. Right around this click, if we notice, Jin is obviously a little bit different position, right? Jin has been a little bit more stayed in flexion with the sternum and stayed in flexion with the knees. Because of club shaft being correctly, we're seeing hand path exiting a little bit more left. Handle's definitely a lot lower at this position. We see players hand path working more right than Jin's. Handle's definitely a lot higher in this position. We see a little bit more of this early extension look, correct? And so we're going to see, we're going to start seeing this player hit some misses to the right, some big blocks to the right, some big overdraws to the left because of this, because there's not a lot of rotation through here. And look, he doesn't really start rotating the axis of his neck until right around this click, then it starts to kind of catch up. So, recommended fixes now that I've seen all of that right there. So if I were currently coaching this player, first things first, we got to get, I think this setup with his knee flex is kind of messing up ideas and kind of how the natural sequencing of the backswing is working. So I'm going to get this player flexing his knees a little bit more at like 154 with this club. And I'm also going to get this lower back spine angle, maybe standing up a little bit taller because of that. So remember, he was over at like kind of 150-ish. I'm going to get him over at that like 154 range to kind of match those two together. Now from there, I'm going to talk about getting a little bit more churn with the sternum. So right now, currently, he's just doing a lot of left bend and then just kind of picking up the hands and the arms. So I'm going to get him to do left bend with rotation to the end of P2 or the end of the takeaway, which is going to get hands a little bit closer to him, right? So he's going to be, hand path will be a little bit more in this direction, hopefully keeping the same wrist angles he's doing right now because I like the way his wrists are working. From there, you're going to see The hips maybe are going to be released a little bit more than this, and the chest is going to be released just a touch more as well. Now from there, top of the swing position, we're going to get him releasing, obviously, the hips a lot more, like I said. And we're also going to get him a little bit more extension in the thoracic to kind of level out this head moving into the ball so soon. From there, once we get all these things, knee flex is going to be a little bit different. Notice, so he's at 154 here. So he went from like, what was he, 167 to 154. So he's doing the reverse of the process that I normally see. So we're going to reverse the way his knees work. So we're going to get him more flex at setup and then extending the right knee at the top of the swing, which will get him make it easier for that thoracic move. Once he gets that, then we're going to work a lot on P5, getting hand path working a lot differently from the top. So we're going to get hand path working more so, let me line this up correctly, more so dropping vertically down is going to be his feel. So basically at this position, notice how his hands are still on that line or slightly above it. We're going to have hands below this line but parallel to it. So then at this position, we're going to see hands are going to be a little bit more this way. At this position, we're going to see club shaft pitch a little bit more this way at that position. And we're going to see body lines maybe a tiny bit more open. So hip line is going to be open around 20 degrees. Shoulder line is going to be maybe 10 degrees closed. And then from there, we're going to see a lot different move through the impact zone. We're going to see knees more in flexion. We're going to see, notice how there's a little bit of this curvature move right here. In the spine, that's going to completely go away. It's going to look a lot more like Jen right here. So a lot less of that curvature. So knees will be more in flexion, sternum will be a little bit lower to the ground. We're going to see this handle is going to be a lot lower as well. So his vertical swing plane is going to be looking at, let's say right now his vertical swing plane's at like, dude, I mean it's got to be at like 60 something right now, like mid 60s. Let me kind of check. Now this isn't a very accurate test, but this can kind of give you an idea. If you don't have TrackMan, this is kind of how you can figure out vertical swing plane a little bit. It's not super accurate, but at least on this 2D roll, it gives you kind of an idea. So let's say he's kind of around 63 right now, and he started at, let's say he started at, I don't know, like 55 maybe, I'll guess, but let's see for sure. Yeah, so he started around 54, 55. So he's gone up, what was that, 7 degrees? So he has a 7-degree variance, which isn't like, obviously that's why he's a pro. That's a lot for a pro, but that's not a lot for like your typical amateurs out there. But you're going to see his vertical swing plane be more so matching. So he's going to be closer to around like 57, 58 probably after all these changes, which then means he's going to have a little bit more control over face to path because handle's not going to be raising as much, which means face angle doesn't have the potential to be pointing more right. And as well, with the handle lower and the club shaft pitch better and the knees in flexion at P5, he's going to be able to start opening up and rotating, getting hand path, kind of working with his rotation of his body, that means through the impact zone, he'll be rotating chest and rotating pelvis and all that, and not having to use a lot of supination to square the face. So I would say that's going to make this player a whole lot more consistent under the gun. But again, it's always just theory, correct? I mean, all this works on paper, and to be honest, through all my experiments with players, it makes them way, way better. And it's made me, obviously, I'm a professional golfer as well. It's made my swing a whole lot better as well. You never really know until you test it out, but definitely the motion I see him having right now, I don't see the top ball strikers doing this. And I think he's losing out on some speed. I think he's losing out on some consistency. And I would definitely, if I was coach, I would change a lot. So anyways, guys, hopefully this kind of enlightened you guys to what I look for in the golf swing. I thought it was pretty cool. This guy was a professional, so I figured it would be cool to kind of see that even professionals have, their swings aren't quite just perfect. And it goes to show how athletic and how good these guys are with hand-eye coordination to be able to have some moves that I would consider really inconsistent, but they can still kind of time it up. So anyways, guys, best of luck out there. Hopefully this helps, and have a good one.
Go send him on his way, put him up in that big caddy, but let him know. Never mind, yo, I need you to go. Take the